podcast. Lucky for me, this is my channel and I can talk about whatever the hell I want and no one can stop me.
If you don't know who Anne Boleyn is, I would kind of ask you where the hell you've been.
I was about to say that as a mark of somebody who's a good person, not necessarily, because I'm sure that everyone loves their mum, even people who are assholes.
Chapter 4. The Dawn of the Philosopher Queen. The video that foreshadowed everything. In this chapter of our tale, the princess returned once more to the corridor of doors, though by now it was growing tiresome, and she was returning more and more infrequently. Then suddenly something caught her eye. A door unlike the others. Behind it lay no workshop, no stage of her own, but instead a large portal, a window that looked upon a distant kingdom and the curious court that had gathered there to watch it. Crowds beyond anything she had ever drawn pressed into this room, hungry for someone to stand before the glass and tell them what they were seeing. The princess felt something quicken in her chest, a flutter, something alluring and titillating. Here was an audience worthy of her destiny. She looked back upon the long corridor of doors behind her and considered. She decided that she would not step forward as she was. Instead, she paused at the threshold and began to craft a mask. And what a mask it was! She wove it from stolen scraps of that hidden corridor she had long ago closed behind the tapestry. The patience of the quiet craft room, the searching questions of the room that unwound her, the measured calm of a scholar who had made peace with uncertainty. It was a beautiful face, a wise face, perhaps the face of a woman she might have become had she stayed in a single room long enough to earn it. And when she stepped into the room wearing her mask, the crowd did not merely applaud, they roared. In one single performance, she had received more adoration than the 10 years of opening doors had ever given her. At long last, proof. The king and queen had been right all along. She was extraordinary. Yet here's the thing about masks that no one tells you when you first hold it to your face and tie the ribbon behind your head. From that day forward, the face beneath it keeps moving. It sweats, it strains, it wants. While the mask stays exactly as it was crafted. The princess was not yet aware that the crowd had not fallen in love with her at all. They had fallen in love with the mask. Every cheer that rang through the crowd landed upon painted porcelain and went no deeper. So the princess stood, drowning in the adoration she had chased her entire life, and found, though she could not admit it yet, that not one drop of it could reach her skin. She would simply have to hold the mask tighter and tighter, for as long as the ribbon would hold. Welcome back, Nuggets. This mother clock has got some thoughts. Let's ruffle some feathers and get into this video. And if you would like to support my tiny pullet of a channel, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hype this video if you can. And don't forget to go check out my other social media as well so you don't miss any announcements. Okay, welcome to Chapter 4 of Rachel's Historical Deep Dive. Now, this is an interesting one and one that I was really interested to get to because I had not actually seen these videos prior to editing this particular video. And my goodness, with 2 years worth of hindsight, almost 2 years worth of hindsight, it is very, very interesting. Not to accidentally quote Rachel there. I'm sorry. Okay, so what we're going to do today is the main event is basically going to be Rachel's first ever video that took her into Girl World and basically made her Rachel Reacts. In fact, at the time that this video was made, she wasn't going by Rachel Reacts yet. At some point she changed that. I'm not really clear when it was, but it was definitely after November of 2024. Now, while that video is going to be the main event, I did just want to cover 2 more videos that she did do before she officially entered Girl World. They didn't really fit in any of the other categories that I had covered with videos, but one thing that I thought that they would highlight, you really see Rachel being kind of herself in these videos, which is, we know to be a little bit witty, a little bit snarky, a little bit sarcastic, a little bit ignorant, if you will. And then there is such a massive difference in her demeanor, in the way that she presents herself in her first ever Girl World video. So, without further ado, shall we get into it? Okay, so the very first video we're going to look at was released on the 11th of September 2024. She officially entered Girl World in November, so this is literally just a couple of months before that. And as we've been seeing with this pattern of Rachel, she's basically doing this huge splattergun effect, just trying to throw shit at the walls, see what sticks. And this one was an attempt at entering the book reviewing world. Now, I haven't read the book that she's going to review. It sounds like it's a little bit of an adult spicy time kind of book. But it is worth noting that she didn't ever do any more book reviews, like at all. And even though reading is something that she brings up quite a bit as something that she's passionate about, I would have thought maybe this would be a good direction to go. But as we know with Rachel, if something doesn't immediately hit success, she deems it a failure and moves on. So this video did, I mean, it was okay. Well, when you consider how big her channel was, which would have been around the 9, almost 10,000 subscriber mark, this video got over 5,000 views. So like, personally, being a channel around that size, I don't think there's anything wrong with that viewer amount. I would have seen that as a success. I would have seen that as, oh yeah, no, my nuggets are interested in this, so I'm going to keep doing it for them. So yeah, let's just have a quick squizzy at a couple of clips from this video.
I will fill your fertile little tonight. Stop it. If you woke up one morning and decided that you wanted to write corn with your sister, would you let your parents read it? Because that is exactly what the authors of these books did.
Sorry, my mistake. It's a trilogy. She's reviewing a trilogy. So these books are clearly a little bit spicy, but Rachel decides in this video that it's super weird to have your parents read this at all and to write this kind of fiction with your sister. It's just a very early version of seeing that Rachel doesn't really see the world in any capacity outside of her own experience, her own lived experience, her own worldview, whatever you want to call it. The point of covering this, don't forget, we're not really looking at what she's saying. We're looking at how she's saying it. We're looking at how sassy she is. We're looking at how animated she is in her face. Just the whole vibe about this video is what we're taking in.
My name is Rachel, and one of the best things about having a YouTube channel is that I'm free to voice my opinions whenever I like. And when it comes to this book series, boy do I have some opinions.
So this was a little bit of a sassy thing that she started doing in this video, and then the next video we're going to look at as well. It's like, you know, I can just cover whatever the cluck I like because it's my YouTube channel. Absolutely, totally correct, because your YouTube channel can be whatever you want it to be. But I think it might be her trying to bridge the gap of explaining why she's doing such varied, like widely varied topics. You know, everything from piercing to religion to spicy time books. You know, it's difficult to draw a thread between those. So she might be trying to explain that. But I do think from what we've seen of Rachel, I think this kind of vibrant, kind of outgoing, kind of sassy version is actually closer to the truth of who she is, because it is who she reverts back to time and time again, thus being the basis of my comparison for this video.
My feelings about this book series are complicated. Now, I can't hide from the fact that I read all 3 books and I did not consider DNFing, but I definitely felt my time had been somewhat wasted. If you decide to give this series a go, please by all means check the trigger warnings and be warned that you are in for a long, long long read. The first thing I want to address is the slightly incestuous vibe of the writing setup of these books. These books are written by a sister duo. Let that sink in. While you let it sink in, consider this. Would you tell your sister your darkest, deepest sexual fantasies? I think no. Now listen, I don't have a sister, so maybe I just don't know what's normal. It's possible that this makes me deeply uncomfortable because I'm not used to the kind of relationships that sisters have with each other. But even if that is the case, I do find a sister duo writing corn slightly inappropriate. In the back of the second book, the sisters write, "To Mum and Dad, for reading everything." Everything? They let their parents read this smut? They are comfortable with their parents knowing that their brains crafted this sentence. "He laps the head of my teal gaze shining. His tongue runs over my purling tip and he groans."
Okay, so she's fixated on what's, quote, normal, not actually spending any time to acknowledge that this might be outside the norm and is absolutely fine to exist outside the norm. She takes the time to explain that she may not understand because she doesn't have a sister relationship, but also in the same breath basically condemns them for doing the wrong thing because it's, quote, incestuous, it's smut, and then they're getting their parents to read it. Look, I don't know. I don't know what is going to be classed as normal or not normal in this situation, but the point being that even though Madam is a philosophy graduate and she's supposed to be embracing the unknown and embracing the questioning, she's still overlaying her own life experience and her own judgments on this situation. And that's basically what is important here, regardless of the actual book.
But who am I to talk? I can only offer my opinion. My credentials for critiquing this series are one creative writing module during my philosophy degree. So Virginia Woolf, I am not. But I do have some thoughts and I am going to share them because, hey, no one can stop me.
I can stop her because this is my channel and I can do whatever the cluck I want and we will not be listening to the rest of the review. Like I say though, it's still on her channel. If you really want to know what she thinks about this trilogy, go nuts. Go nuts. Okay, so the next video that I wanted to cover with her is I guess kind of an album, kind of an artist review. It's entitled In Praise of Dave, and this one only got just over 2,000 views. So for Rachel, we know that this is a massive failure in her eyes. And this was an interesting one. There were a couple of little behaviorally telling things in it that I will highlight. But this is actually, when you think about it, a precursor to the attempt that she made to take a break from Girl World when she did a review of the artist who's doing a lot of feminist material. I've already done a complete video on that, so we won't be covering it. But she actually mentioned this artist, Dave, in that video as well. I did not include all of it because it felt really shoehorned into that video and didn't add any substance to it. But she had previously done this video on an artist, proving that when she felt like she had hit a wall with Girl World because Reactageddon and all of that stuff had gone down, she pulled back and attempted to do this new style of video, or a return to her roots as it turns out to be. But it only got like 4,000 views and it really limped across that line. And for her being a much, much larger channel at that time, that was clearly unacceptable to her because she made one attempt at it and didn't go back to it at all. I kind of wish she had have stayed doing something that she knew, because like some of the topics that come up in Girl World are very serious and they're very triggering. And some of her ignorant takes on some of these topics are actually damaging to the people that are listening to her videos. And that's problematic, right? As a public creator, I think there is a social responsibility to handle these topics with care. And she just doesn't. So sticking to something like music or a book, maybe that would be a safer realm for her. Or even like the religion stuff, you know, like I said, I felt that she dealt with that really well. It didn't get the numbers that she wanted, but the content was better. And more to my point, crochet. She was really, really good at crochet, but those videos take so much effort. She clearly didn't want to do that, so she stopped doing them. She is seeking, just like the rest of the girls, She's seeking the biggest paycheck for the least amount of work, which is absolutely fine if that's how you want to run your channel. I just feel like you should be honest about that if that's how you're trying to run things and not masquerade around as some sort of philosophy expert.
Hi. There aren't many rappers who can cause a reaction like this.
Oh my God.
Or this.
Oh my God.
Or even this.
Oh my God.
But Dave can. Picture the scene. It's 2010 on a cold November evening, and I'm standing on the platform of New Cross Station. I have a new song on my BlackBerry Curve 3G, which my friend Bluetoothed to me in the playground earlier that day. It's called Days and Nights by a UK grime rapper called Devlin. I had nothing better to do. I was waiting for a train, so I turned it up in my headphones and started to listen. I remember very clearly that is when my love and obsession with UK grime and rap started. I hadn't ever really given this kind of music a chance. Before this, I was listening to Teenage Dream by Katy Perry, which was released in the same year. Believe it or not, in 2019 I was absolutely smashing the gym, and I would walk about not even a kilometre to the gym every single day. I would always stick on Dave's Psychodrama album, and I would genuinely frequently stop in my tracks, as in like I'm walking and I would stop walking and be like, oh my God, and wish that I had someone standing there with me so that I could explain to them the wordplay that I had finally understood.
Okay, so something that we saw in Rachel's other music review video is that I think Rachel really enjoys the feeling of the quote intelligence that comes with interpreting a slightly obscure lyric. I get that because there's a lot of, poetry nerds out there that do the same thing. The problem that Rachel encounters, and if you haven't watched that other video that I did on the feminist artist that I'm talking about, you might want to, because the problem with Rachel is she takes these lyrics that are just so obvious in what they mean. It's obvious to everybody who's listening to it, but she thinks that she's had this incredible epiphany that is so intelligent and she just can't bear but share it with the entire world, and unfortunately it's giving 13-year-old girl has discovered alternative music kind of vibe, if you know what I mean. So it doesn't at all surprise me to hear her talk like that in this video, because that is something that we've learned about her that she just really enjoys. And to be quite honest, if that's what makes her happy, I think go nuts, do it, make those kind of videos. It's just not up to the quality of some of your other music reviewers, but that's not necessarily a reason to not do it, right? It's just a little bit cringe, but sometimes people like that. It's fine.
Through listening to that album, I became completely and utterly convinced that Dave is a genuine, literal fucking genius.
Now, look, full disclosure, this kind of music, I looked him up. I didn't know who he was. I looked him up. This is not really the sort of music that gives me the fizz. I don't know whether this man is a lyrical genius or not. I just can't speak on it. The bits and pieces that I listened to, I can't say I see it, but maybe it just wasn't. Maybe his most popular videos are just not the ones that are deep and genius level. So I'll leave room for that. If anybody knows this rapper and really enjoys his work and can speak on his work, I would be interested to hear your take on it.
Although in his song Verdansk, he does rap, chill with the stupid looks or it's going to be a kettle that I use to cook, which shows that he still has his edge. It's also funny because that is some of the best wordplay that Dave has in this album. In the UK, the only way you can really cook in your prison cell is using a kettle. So Dave is basically saying, chill with the stupid looks or I'm going to do something that means I end up in prison. I actually have a screenshot from when I clocked this lyric back in 2021. Bear in mind that by that time I've been listening to Verdansk for 3 months.
Do you see what I mean? So she's been listening to this for 3 months. I feel like those lyrics are fairly self-explanatory and not super deep. Maybe that's just my take. Maybe I'm completely ignorant on that. Let me know what you think. But this, to me, is very reminiscent of what she basically did in that other video that I've already covered. But you can really see how much she loves the sensation of unraveling these lyrics and fully understanding what they are, which in and of itself, I would say, is not necessarily a great philosophical take on lyrics because lyrics are essentially poetry, right? And so by her seeking the definitive meaning of said lyrics can actually be doing them a disservice and not what they're for in the first place, because poetry should evoke something within you, or maybe you can apply it to your life in a different way than what the artist meant. And there's a whole lot of depth that can be brought, and especially a philosopher should be comfortable with the idea of not knowing, of not having the question answered, but she needs desperately to answer the question.
Editing Rachel here, I realise now that I have kind of skirted over the question of whether Dave is misogynistic or not, because I got far too excited breaking down this wordplay. There are lyrics where Dave is without a doubt 100% misogynistic, and there's no way of getting around that. Please take this Editing Rachel section as me making it very clear that, yeah, there are some misogynistic parts, even though Dave claims to not be. I don't feel like I'd be doing my due diligence by not mentioning this in a video in praise of Dave. I definitely don't want to skirt over this whatsoever. Dave has been misogynistic in some of his lyrics, without a doubt, and that is not okay. But in the ones I'm about to break down, he does claim not to be. Okay, back to the video.
I mean, honestly, I was going to say something about this. But then I really like Motley Crue, who are quite possibly the most misogynistic band that has ever existed of all time. So, like, I don't really care. Listen to the music that brings you joy. Don't listen to the stuff that doesn't. I don't think it needs to be any deeper than that.
Just fucking amazing. He's so talented. When I was scripting this video, I became aware that it's not that smart to put a video on the internet of you just singing the praises of one particular person, because it could age badly. God forbid something awful comes out about Dave and I end up looking like a sausage for making this video. I back him not to do anything stupid and make me look like an idiot, but if that does happen, then so be it.
Oh, my sweet summer child, 2024 Rachel. Boy, do I have some news for you, madam. Things are not going to go well, and it's not Dave's fault. Okay, moving on.
One of the flaws that some people see in Dave, and that is that he's arrogant. All I have to say to that is, wouldn't you be? If you were as successful as Dave is, wouldn't you be at least a little bit arrogant? If you had earned so much money that your mum, who had been working multiple jobs, now drives a Mercedes which you bought her, I think that would be cause to be somewhat arrogant.
Just take in that worldview, right? She is so money focused. She has been so money focused for a while now. That is the epitome of success to her. How much money do you have? Because another take on this would be, yeah, okay, so you came from nothing and you've built yourself up to enough to be able to buy your mother basically whatever she wants. Some may say that that is more of a reason to be humble because you know where you came from. You know what it's like to be without, and you have let it enrich your life and change your life so that hopefully you can become a better person with or without wealth. But Rachel's worldview is he went from nothing, made obscene amounts of money. So yeah, doesn't he have a right to be arrogant? Wouldn't you be arrogant? Meaning, I would be arrogant. In fact, I might be so arrogant to wipe my tears with banknotes. All of this is telling. All of this was there from the beginning, but hidden in videos, up to this point, hidden in videos that had not done well. So nobody was aware. And to Rachel's credit, the one that did bring her to Girl World was very different than this. Very, very different. It's just a shame that it wasn't really who she was. And finally, just this last little clip from this video, I couldn't believe it when I heard it. I'm like, okay, just knowing the community that we have, I know how this is going to hit. We've already had little conversations on the Discord about this particular clip because boy, is it something.
And Dave consistently mentions his mum in his lyrics, in his interviews. It's really obvious that he rates that woman and cares about her so much. And in my opinion, you know, that is a mark of somebody who, well, I know, I was about to say that is a mark of somebody who's a good person. Not necessarily, because I'm sure that everyone loves their mum, even people who are assholes.
How does that sit with you? Now, in my mind, that is a slightly ambiguous phrase that she's used there, because it could be taken from the perspective of, I'm sure everybody loves their parents even if their parents are assholes, or I'm sure everybody loves their parents even if the child is an asshole. Both statements, you know, both statements I take huge exception with. But this is showing how sheltered and relatively adversity-free her life has been. And I'm not pointing to the economic privilege that she's had. I'm not pointing to the location that she was born or even the color of her skin kind of privilege. I'm talking about it is so far outside of Rachel's experience that somebody would hate their parents because of what their parents did, that she was about to say that it is the mark of a good person of somebody who loves their parents. How does that sit with you? It's a shame that this video was buried with only 2,000 views, because this right here is Rachel telling on herself. Just like all the other girls, this is Rachel telling on herself. And this is why she has absolutely no business masquerading herself as an intellectual who understands the psychology of trauma or domestic violence. This is what makes her dangerous. And this is why I cover her, because so far we haven't had any growth. Although I am still very much here for a Rachel redemption arc. Please, please, Rachel, have a redemption arc. So the next video is our main event. We're going to go through this one with a lot more detail than we did with the other ones. Now, this was her first Girl World video, and this was her launch into success. This was the kind of views that Rachel had been waiting for. And I don't think it's a coincidence that she then stuck with Girl World moving forward from this point, because Rachel is all about the money, she's all about the numbers, she's all about her perceived success, and this video did it. Now, this video was deleted on the 2nd of November 2025, which is exactly when React-Again went down. I fully understand why she deleted this video. This video is so damning for her and who she became. I totally understand why somebody like Rachel would want to delete this video rather than own up to your own mistakes and take responsibility for your own mistakes and then embrace growth. No, let's just hide all of the mistakes that we've done in the past. So at the point of being deleted, this video had well over 700,000 views. And as you can see from the little graph I've got here, it's not that this happened after she got popular. This video did really well from the get-go and basically took her from a 9 or 10,000 subscriber channel into like a good 30,000 and then upwards from there. Coincidentally, this video was released on the 13th of November 2024. Do you know what else happened on the 13th of November 2024? I released my first Girl World video. Yes, both Rachel and I entered Girl World as reactors on the exact same day. Isn't that wild? And then almost a year to the day, she had her downfall, because the downfall happened at the beginning of November in 2025. I'm still around and kicking, so I'll consider that a success. How's that? But this video, while it is deleted, it was a really good video. To Rachel's credit, this video was so well researched. It was so well put together. It wasn't just a video on Amber. It was also a video and a study into the greater feeding issue. And while there are some problematic aspects to this video, which I think she could very safely just edit out and then re-upload this video, because overall it is a good video. It is such a shame that this is not who she really was. Had this have been really her, I think she would have had such a flourishing career in Girl World, and her and I probably honestly would have been doing collabs. You'll see there's similarities in the delivery to this. And also why I hold absolutely no criticism of people who were fooled by her, because this video is so convincing. If we hadn't been doing the deep dive all the way up to this point, and that was the first video that you saw of her, absolutely. She seems really intelligent, really well put together, really well thought out, really well researched. She even put all of her sources. She does none of this anymore. Now, if you want to watch this entire video, because there's a lot of it that I really can't put on my channel, like copyright things and some conversations that I think she probably would have had problems with YouTube. But good news. The Wayback Machine caught it, and that's how I managed to grab it because, yeah, it was deleted. So what I will do is pop the link in the description to the Wayback Machine, and I do actually encourage you give it a watch. It was a good video. But let's get into this, shall we? The birth of Rachel React.
Amberlynn Reid thinks that she is living in a love story, but she's not. She's living in a horror story. She herself has victims, but she is also a victim.
Okay, this is straight away setting up the tone of this video. She is approaching it the way a philosopher should, which is taking into account that multiple perspectives can be true. All of this sounds very good. I wouldn't have had a problem with this so far. Also, before we get further into it, I do just want to highlight, I'm deliberately picking out the parts that I either have an issue with or that I want to talk about. They were only parts of the video, and the rest of it, particularly a very large segment that she did on other feeders and their relationships, that I cut out because there wasn't anything behavioral to look at. They were great. They really were. But anyway, moving forward.
In this video, I'm going to assess the question, to what extent is Amberlynn Reid an adult who is free to carry on however she pleases? And at what point are her viewers or her family or her partner, wink wink, supposed to step in and stop her from carrying out behaviours which could result in her death?
Roll up with vanilla ice cream.
And over the next few months, if she does gain weight and suffer adverse health effects from this, to what extent can we blame her new feeder girlfriend?
So when you compare the vibe of this video, the way she's talking, the words she's using, even the color palette, everything about this video compared to the previous two videos we looked at, there is a massive, massive difference in her demeanor and basically who she's trying to present herself to be, right? And this is, I think, where Rachel went completely wrong, is that she was pretending to be somebody that maybe she wanted to be. You know, maybe this is a version of herself that she was aspiring to be, but it could have also just been an out-and-out act, right? Maybe this is mimicking somebody that she saw in her philosophy degree. I don't know, but this is not her. This is a complete facade. That's not to say that I think that everybody who has a YouTube channel or social media presence necessarily needs to be authentically themselves, because, like, you look at Nikocado Avocado, that's a character. It's clear it's a character. He's having fun with it. You know, it's a different way to go. But I think where it went wrong with Rachel was that she was trying to present herself as a very level-headed, very authentic, very logical and learned person, which innately gains trust within the audience. And that's going to be the kind of relationship that they have with you. And that's a problem if you then get found out to be a complete fraud, because with the trust base, you've now broken it. Compared to Nikocado Avocado, you know, his videos were always very silly. It was always very over-dramatized. And so if people were to find out, or, well, I suppose they did, people finding out that that's not really him, it's different because he hasn't necessarily fostered a trust base with his community. It's different. And the persona that Rachel created for this really needed to be authentically her. I actually think that she could have pulled off this, like, learned mixed with the mean girl sassy person that she actually is. I think she could have done that. And if she had have done that, the fallout wouldn't have been as bad, and that apology video wouldn't have been seen as bad as what it was. So yeah, like I said, I actually find this version of Rachel to be very likable and easy to listen to, and it is such a shame that it just wasn't who she was. I think this particular house of cards was always going to fall.
Amberlynn has recently started dating somebody whose name is Emily, but I call them Tommy because that's how they were introduced to me, and the likelihood of me messing up during this video is much lower if I just stick to the one name that I kind of know them as in my head. So we're going to call her Tommy, and I think she's okay with being called that.
Okay, so a couple of things about this. Reaction channels were not using the name Emily yet. That was something that she threw in. At this point, it was Tommy. But also to the point, you kind of get a little hint of who Rachel actually is here, because at the bottom of the screen, she put asterisks, not that I care, she can rot. Yes. Okay, so not only did we drop the full name, but we don't really care anyway, so like, I don't know. I don't know what she's trying to sell here, but I'm not buying it. I'm going to keep calling her Emily because these days it's very out there, and even Amber is calling her Emily at this point, which was for me to be able to start calling her Emily as well, just from a personal ethical stance.
Amber won't survive if she stays in this relationship. This topic, to me, is absolutely fascinating. What sparked me to make this video was a clip that I saw of Amber, where she's explaining how she can't get into her girlfriend's truck.
We had to get me this like step thingy because her truck is so tall. So getting into it is a challenge.
She claims that this is because the truck is so high, but it's kind of clear to anyone watching that it's not so much the truck being high as it is Amber being huge.
This is going to become more evident throughout this video as well, other clips that I've included, but something that I do take exception to here, because I don't like Emily, and I think I've said many a time that I really feel like those two are giving as good as they get at this point. But Rachel actually makes some really serious allegations in this video, and just some of the language that's used around basically Emily being adjacent to a serial unaliver. It's a little too heavy-handed. It lacks the finesse that I think the persona that Rachel is trying to sell to us would actually do, because the reality of this situation is, I saw on a Geordie live around this time, actually, where he actually called Colleen's brother. This is the late partner of Emily, the one before Amber. And the brother's stance was that he, at least at the time, didn't actually feel that Emily had contributed to the situation at all. Colleen was already in a care facility by the time they started dating, and she was well on her way to basically having the outcome of her life that she had decided. I think that people like Emily and the kinds of activities that they partake in are horrible, and I think that there's something extraordinarily ethically questionable about them, but I think it's a step too far, in this situation at least, to say killer. So that's going to be probably my just the language I'm critiquing at this point. But then this starts to happen.
I pictured her girlfriend Tommy, who is a technically kind of attractive masked lesbian, which are something of a worshipped breed on the internet, let's be honest, who drives this truck and has this good job.
Worshipped breed on the internet, who has a big truck and holds down a good job. So this is well before the flirting. Don't forget, the whole flirting situation would have happened around September, October of 2025. This is November of 2024. So straight from the get-go, the very first video that Rachel ever made of Girl World, she says no less than 3 times that Emily is attractive in some way, shape, or form. And I know that wording was a little bit weird, technically attractive. I think she was softening it because Rachel also has a girlfriend at the moment. And I think she also understands that it would be weird to just out and out say, I find this person attractive. But it started this early. Were any of you aware of this? I did not realize. And it has shifted this back and forth that I've had, is it Amber that she's obsessed with? Is it Emily that she's obsessed with? Where is the obsession lying? Because this all gets very weird, very relatively fast as well. Like within a year, it's getting weird. I have settled on it's both of them. I think it's this whole clucking situation. I think she's titillated by it. I think it's right up her alley. I don't understand why, but it started this clucking early.
What I'm not going to do in this video is defend Amber's past actions, but I am going to ask some big-ish questions and try to offer some somewhat nuanced big-ish answers about what the heck is really going on between Amber and Tommy, and to what extent we should all be worrying. I will preface this entire video by calmly and actively stating I know Amberlynn Reid is a crappy person. This video is not about her being a crappy person, but I'm also not going to push that fact to one side. I'm going to kind of take this fact about Amber, that she's a crappy person, and hold it in my mind, knowing that this is true of the person I'm talking about whilst I talk about her.
This turns so differently in the end. I have some examples to show you at the end of this video because this sounds so good. Why wasn't this real? Why couldn't this have been the real Rachel? I think I would have really enjoyed her content like this. It's so rational. It's so well-rounded to be able to say, yes, I'm not ignoring the awful things that Amber has been proven to do time and time again, but I also want to discuss this incredibly complex situation that is feederism and this relationship with Emily. It's great. It was fake.
I've been watching Amberlynn Reid since maybe 2018, which feels like not very long ago, but in actuality 2018 was, oh my god, 6 years ago, which makes me feel old. It wasn't so much of a hate watch, it was more of a fascination watch.
A fascination watch. Also, Rachel, 6 years, oh, making me feel old. Oh, her saying that makes me feel old. But yeah, not a hate watch, but a fascination watch. And I believe she's also said in another video that she perceives, because it's Rachel and it's her worldview, she perceives that everybody starts as babies or like genuine viewers and then turn haters. So this makes sense to document that originally in 2008 at least, she was watching Amber as a legitimate viewer.
As a viewer, there is something kind of fascinating about watching somebody fall from grace so badly and fail so badly at a goal which seemed, at the time, relatively achievable.
What do you do? What do you say to this kind of thing? Like, yeah, a lot of people like to watch the fall. Look, I am genuinely here to see redemption arcs. I like to hold that everybody is like able to change and achieve the things that they want in their life. I have said it already in this video. I am here for Rachel's redemption arc. I think she could do it. I don't think any of this is irredeemable. I think she's got some work to do, don't get me wrong. But she is here actively saying that she enjoyed or enjoys watching the downfall of Amber. And in fact, only a recent video she entitled The Satisfying Downfall of Amberlynn. And look, I'll speak for myself. I don't find it satisfying. I wish that she had have taken many a different turn at many different points in time. And I also hold that sentiment for Rachel.
At best, Amberlynn is a mentally ill victim of severe childhood trauma who hasn't been able to shake the effects of this in her adult life and has carried out pretty awful patterns of behaviour which have had detrimental effects on all of her partners. At worst, she is an evil narcissistic liar who manipulates her fanbase and abuses her animals. I'll let you make your own decision on that, but I didn't want to make a video about this person without very clearly stating right at the beginning, I know she's a crappy person. I've been there, I've watched all the videos, I know what she's done.
So just highlighting again, this is a really, really different Rachel than what we're used to seeing in present day. This is somebody who's saying, I'm going to present these facts to you and you can make up your mind. Whereas current Rachel is very much, I'm just going to hate on this person and make their life miserable and trifle in their relationship and cause breakups and crash outs. And then I'm going to sit on the internet and laugh about it.
Also, I recently discovered that Amberlynn Reid's favourite drink is Dr. Pepper Zero, which is my favourite drink, which was really quite horrifying to discover, and I am triggered, I'm not going to lie. I like to think that our similarities begin and end there, but I am also a little fatty, so maybe we've got more similarities than I want to admit.
Yes, this is still very much a video that I want to make. I will probably make it after the big move, so maybe next year sometime, all of the similarities between Rachel and Amber, because they are abundant and it does not stop at a soft drink preference for sure. But yeah, the similarities do happen. I think every creator at some point, or even viewers at some point, notice the focus people having very, very similar things in common. Like, for example, Rachel and I with that entire yarn stash behind her there. Yeah, similarities are a thing. It is triggering when it happens. And no, sorry, Rachel, there are many, 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 many parallels with you and Amber.
Now, Tommy is Amber Lynn Reid's new girlfriend, as I've mentioned, and she's recently been exposed for being a feeder. I am going to show you the things I've seen which convince me that Tommy is a feeder. I haven't just kind of like accepted this from one or two videos I've seen. I've got some evidence and I am going to share it with you.
She actually, to her credit, brought a whole lot of research papers and a whole lot of sources and everything to back this up. I am somewhat of the agreement with her here, but I'm never going to resolutely say definitively that yes, I think this woman is a feeder, just because of the deeper meaning of what that actually is and what that can do, and the fact that she's a nurse. And yeah, look, all of you can have your opinions, absolutely. I'm just going to not say that on my platform. But it did not escape my attention that the photo she used here was actually of Emily smoking. If you know, you know. Yes. Anyway, moving right along, and to the point of this, like, this video is very geared from the perspective of like, this is what feeders are, this is what they do, and this is why they're bad. And yet, only in February of 2026, she was saying this.
Sitting there and saying that she's the victim is a joke. She is not anyone's victim.
And I took massive exception to that at the time. Saying that Amber is not anybody's victim is factually incorrect. It just is. And even Rachel herself goes on to talk about Amber's past trauma and things that Rachel has no business talking about. But in that video of February 2026, that video was just so venomous and mean-hearted towards Amber. It is the polar opposite of what this video is that we're looking at today.
The most important thing that we need to ascertain here is whether Tommy is a feeder or not. We need to know. If she is, we need to know. If she isn't, we need to know. I am convinced that she is. Just to give you some background on me, if you've not seen my videos before, I have a philosophy degree, and my degree is literally how to not be convinced by crappy arguments.
Who had that on their bingo card? Rachel has a philosophy degree. So, Miss Philosophy Degree is not taking the time to say, what would it look like if I were wrong? She is sitting there saying, I have made up my mind and I'm going to give you all of the evidence as to why I've made up my mind. At no point does she sit back and say, what would it look like if I were wrong? What are some alternative explanations for this behavior that we're seeing? This is the kind of level of analysis that I think Rachel is cosplaying at the moment, and that's the depth that's lacking, that kind of, to a really super keen eye in the moment, would have gone, something's not right here. But like I said, this video was so well put together, I don't at all criticize anybody for fully believing that this is who she was.
So I am convinced by this argument that Tommy's a feeder. And because of the kind of person I am, I can't just watch a video where somebody says something and then go, yep, that's true, I'll take that as fact. I personally need it to be proven to me, at least in some way.
Now, in this proving dialogue that she does here, she shows all of the photos of Colleen and Emily, and even showing the funeral and things like it, scattered all the way through this video. I don't want to continue to put that on my channel. I think it's one thing to document it as news at the time that it's happening, but to continually post those photos, like the woman's passed, we're just gonna let her be. But like I say, this is on the Wayback Machine if you want to go watch it. And I'll just add, it's nothing that we haven't seen before. It's all the same stuff. You know it all if you've been watching my Rachel videos, if you've been watching other people's Amber videos, if you were there at the time, you know everything she's going to say.
If you need more evidence, which I personally did, because Amber Lynn actually rebutted this by saying that Tommy and Colleen needed to make money. Amber said that Tommy and Colleen were dating, they were in a long-distance relationship, and they couldn't afford all of the travel. So what they did was produce feederism content so that they could monetize it on the internet, so they could afford to see each other. Sounds kind of convincing, except that it's not, but we're going to get into that in a second. The first thing is that we've seen evidence of Tommy having a type. Lots of people have types. I personally like a soft mask lesbian with emotional vulnerability and the ability to hold down a proper job, but hey, that's just me. Tommy has made it frightfully clear that her type is big women.
And that's the second time that she's going to comment. And I would have thought for a moment that she was describing her girlfriend, like her IRL girlfriend, except that that's kind of how she described Emily earlier, right? She described her as a mask lesbian who has a big truck and holds a good job. And then she kind of reiterates the same words again, which make me think that that's exactly who she's talking about. And it's not going to be the last time she says something to that effect in this video.
Another thing that I found extremely convincing is how quickly Tommy moved on from her partner. Tommy can be seen at her fiancé's funeral claiming to be heartbroken that her partner is dead. But not 2 months later, she's already messaging Amber Lynn, and before Amber Lynn, she was already messaging other women as well. I have never lost a partner, thank God, so I can't really comment on how long it would take somebody to get over the death of their fiancé. However, I do think that 2 months is a suspicious amount of time when that fact is taken in conjunction with all of the other things that we know about Tommy.
So if Rachel were really who she was trying to present herself to be in this, she wouldn't have made up her very judgmental stance about something that she's never lived of, I think that's suspicious. I've addressed this in other videos before, but I'll just reiterate it now in case nobody has caught that. Maybe it was in lives, I don't remember. There are reasons that somebody would move that quickly. The most obvious reason, and I think the reason that Rachel is trying to present here, is that Emily didn't actually really care about Colleen, and it was purely about the paraphilic disorder that was going on and nothing more, so that enabled her to move on. But the reality is people look for companionship in all different shapes and forms, all different ways, for all different reasons. And I think the puzzle piece that makes the most sense to me is not actually that it's a reflection of how Emily felt about Colleen, but it's actually more of a reflection that she was just trying to get somebody, like any sort of connection in her life at all, to battle the loneliness that was going on. I think we have some evidence to suggest that the relationship, or the way that Emily saw the relationship with Amber, was not as deep as what Amber was trying to present to us. And it's very possible that this was just supposed to be a really kind of light, flirtatious thing that they were talking online, and then it got a little too far. Emily has mishandled things, Amber has mishandled things, and you know, the rest is history. I also think it's understandable that some people just really don't deal with loneliness well. Some people don't deal with that void in their life very well. And I don't think it's an accident that Emily was looking for online relationships after having had an in-person one, because it does create that kind of distance. Look, I don't know. We're never going to know because we're not in the relationship with these women. But my main takeaway here is that Rachel has made up her mind when she's trying to present herself as a philosophy graduate, but she's never at any point in this video trying to look at different perspectives. What would it look like if I was wrong? What are some alternative things that might be going on here? And I think the social responsibility to actually have these conversations is very important, especially when we're talking about things like grief or about paraphilic disorders. And before we start labeling somebody a killer,
comment from somebody called TigerLily93, which I found on a Feederism website, says, I've been fortunate enough to help 3 people so far reach their goal of immobility. 2 of my feedies decided to move into nursing homes after becoming immobile, and the other I fed until the day he died. This is just one example, but I can promise you from the research I've done, this example is not alone. All of my sources are linked in the description, by the way, if you want to know how I'm so confident in my opinions.
Once again, very well researched. I will give her that. But the thing is, just because you can find evidence of feeders seeing their victims in that way, and I do agree with her that is absolutely a factor of this, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a commentary on what Emily's doing or feeling. And I hate, by the way, that she's making me defend Emily this much. Because you know that I feel like essentially, whether they are going for that ultimate end goal or whether they're just participating in it for the titillation, it's really all the same, because you're gambling with some very extreme health conditions here and some very extreme physiques that I don't think even just playing in it is acceptable on an ethical or moral level. Unfortunately, it's not a crime. What Rachel is trying to say here is very heavy-handed and very judgmental, also very close-minded.
And then the person either decides they can't stand it and wants to lose weight, at which point the feeder breaks up with them and moves on to somebody else, or the person dies. The scary thing is that Tommy has done this. Tommy already has one deceased partner. This person was over £1,000. She got over that partner in absolutely record time and moved on to Amber Lynn.
So over £1,000, I don't know that that's true. And I know that I've been saying that it's well researched, but realistically, I've seen 3 different numbers around the place, everything from like £700 to £1,000. I don't know what's accurate here. But another thing that Rachel is failing to put on the table that I think is really important before you go calling somebody an unalive feeder is that Colleen was already in that care facility. Colleen had already given into her condition. Colleen had already made some decisions, and that was all before Emily entered the picture. Emily 100% did not help the situation, without a doubt. That was not an appropriate pairing, especially when you consider that she's a nurse. It's really concerning. It is. But Rachel's sitting here saying Emily is the cause of Colleen's passing. And I don't think that can be accurately said. And like I said, at the time, even Colleen's brother didn't feel that way. So I'll leave you to think what you want to about that situation. But I think this is irresponsible for Rachel to be putting out there. And then I wonder if she was so heavy-handed on this video, and I guess we'll find out, but did that then cause her to overcompensate in the other direction, sharing Emily's domestic violence story, which was her first major cluck up? So we'll find out. We will track it, and we will find out together, won't we, my nuggets?
She clearly didn't love her partner as much as she claimed to, because she was immediately moving on to somebody else and using the same words to talk about her new partner as she did about her previous partner.
So here's what I'll say about this, and why I say that grief is a funny thing, and people deal with loneliness in different ways. People get into relationships for different reasons, and the fact that Rachel is kind of making the assumption that Emily went from a very loving relationship into another very loving relationship, it is nothing but an assumption. She is speculating there because we don't know definitively how Emily was feeling in each of those relationships. But the thing that comes to mind for me, when my grandfather passed, my grandmother actually started dating somebody within 2 months of his passing. And then she was married within 9 months of his passing. I was very young at the time. I took that very badly because to me it felt like a betrayal of my grandfather and his memory. But, you know, growing up a little bit, gaining a little bit of life perspective, I'm able to look back on that and go, my grandmother was struggling. She was struggling so badly, alone in a very large house. She needed that companionship. It doesn't mean that one relationship that was a very intense love means that the next one is a 1:1 replacement. That's not how humans work. There are other reasons to do this. And I think that it would be unwise to completely close the door to the perspective that maybe Emily was just struggling in that moment. And maybe Amber, shockingly, was lying to us about what that relationship actually was. I think it's grown into something more now, but at the time that it started is what I'm talking about specifically. So we're still getting extremely judgmental, extremely close-minded, and ignorant views from Rachel here.
So now we hold 2 truths in our mind. One, Amberlynn Reid is a very bad person and everything that comes with that. The other is that Tommy is a known proven feeder. We now know that these two things are facts and we can kind of hold them in our mind and move forward with my next points. So we know that Amberlynn is a crappy person, but to what extent does that mean that she deserves to suffer at the hands of a feeder? And to what extent is she a consenting adult who is free to do whatever she wants? I'm going to tackle both of these questions now.
And this is kind of where I come down on it too. It's like these are all adults. These are all people who are giving as good as they get at this point. There's no clear victim. There's no clear perpetrator. It's in different ways for sure, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they deserve each other. But you don't intervene because at this point they're adults. They're not hurting anyone else. Hopefully.
Another example which I find quite interesting is the YouTuber Eugenia Cooney. For all of their physical differences, Amber and Eugenia, in my opinion, are actually very similar. Would I feel that I have a responsibility to stick my oar in and do something about Eugenia's situation? Well, to be honest, maybe yes. Maybe I do feel that somebody should force Eugenia to go into a program and physically override her own consent and force her to seek help because she looks like she's on death's door. However, Amber is also on death's door, so why is it that I don't feel that Amber should be forced to stop eating, and yet I do believe that Eugenia should be forced to eat?
So I don't like the word forced, but I do see these two as pretty much the same extreme as each other, just at the very, opposite ends of the spectrum. The fact that Rachel, look, in her defense, I like that she's asking the question, why do I feel this way? Why do I think one is okay and one isn't? I do like that she's asking that question, but she never really explores that within herself. And the fact that she is differentiating these two people, I mean, it could be a reflection of her own current state, because we know that she has been much, much closer towards Amberlynn's end of things than, say, a normal physique. We know that. Rachel herself has said that. And perhaps she's trying to excuse her own situation and minimize her own situation. Or maybe she's just experiencing that social stigma of the whole thing where Eugenia's end of the spectrum is all about sacrifice and going without, and there's suffering associated, whereas with Amber's end, there's this social idea that, well, she gets to eat cake and overeating is so much more fun than not eating. And it's just this whole thing that Amber is indulgence rather than restriction, right? So that seems more fun. There is absolutely a double standard. I wish Rachel have reflected on that within herself.
We can safely park this point here, though, because there is a massive difference between Amber and Eugenia.
I disagree. She didn't really finish that thought. I disagree. There is not a massive difference between those two, and I think the people in their lives need to be helping them the best they can. And unfortunately, both of them, through slightly different circumstances, only have enablers in their life.
The question we should really be asking ourselves is it okay for Tommy to stand beside somebody and watch them make awful choices for their health, and not only refuse to stop it, but actually encourage them, and not only encourage them, but actually gain sexual gratification from watching this occur?
Yeah, and that's what makes it a paraphilic disorder, because it's resulting in the harm of somebody else, and questionable whether or not consent can be given. I've gone into this in exquisite detail in another video. I'll link it below if you want to watch it and you haven't yet. I really explore the paraphilic disorder that's on the table at the moment.
Just a quick comment back to the Eugenia Cooney thing. I think the main difference here is the proximity. So yes, perhaps it's not my job to tell Amber what she should or shouldn't eat. Perhaps it's not my job to tell Eugenia what she should or shouldn't eat. But I think it is Eugenia's mum's job, or Eugenia's friend's job, or Eugenia's doctor's job. And that is because these people are close and present. So if close, present people have a responsibility for the health and well-being of those around them, doesn't Tommy have a genuine moral duty of care to Amber? I would argue, yes, she absolutely does.
I agree. And several of you are really uncomfortable with the thought that Emily is actually a nurse. I would like to think that hopefully she's able to compartmentalize between her duties as a caregiver and then the paraphilic disorder that she's clearly indulging in at the moment. I hope there's a cutoff. I really do. But I know that there's a lot of you that are concerned about that.
But Tommy is going to start encouraging her to eat more. It'll be, just eat one more slice of cake, babe, or just have another portion of fries, or hey, hun, I bought you this pecan pie. That made me laugh. I don't know why.
I don't know why that's funny. She's talking about this incredibly serious situation. I have no idea why she found that entertaining.
But it's just that the way manipulators do, bit by bit, slowly by slowly, they just creep into your mind and start to place their ideas in your head. Amber, being the insecure victim of childhood abuse that she is, who suffers with severe mental health issues, is going to struggle in the face of such clear abuse. She will be absolutely at the mercy of her more attractive enabler, killer partner, who she's so dependent on.
And there it is, the third time that she's referenced this, her more attractive enabler killer girlfriend, Rachel. I can't believe it, honestly. And that's why the concept of consent in this situation is in question, because yes, she is an adult and can make these decisions, but there is a condition on the table. And as soon as that condition is on the table, it kind of starts to want to continue to perpetuate itself because it feels like a comfort zone. So the person is going to constantly return to the thing that brings them comfort. And it's kind of like when you consider the more kind of normal, quote normal, common paraphilias, like the BDSM kind of crowd, that there are safe words. There are situations in which this is being engaged in and the person can opt out at any time. But when we're talking about a condition, it is all the time. It is their life. It is everything they think about. And to be able to be in that moment and say yes or no to that food that is being offered to you, it's not as simple as just saying you're an adult, choose what you want. It's no longer just that black and white at that point. And this is kind of what we might be seeing with the likes of Quirky Love Rosie and Remily, where people are suspecting that there is actually paraphilic disorder of many different varieties going on. But if it is, it kind of looks like it's 24/7. It's not this isolated bedroom play. It is a constant thing. And when something is a constant thing like that, can a safe word effectively be implemented at that point? And all of this kind of plays into each other.
Sometimes you hear the saying, it's a fetish, it's a kink, whatever. You crack on, do what you want, provided you're not hurting anyone. And I'm not here to kink shame. If it's just a normal kink where you aren't hurting anyone, crack on. But this comes with the massive caveat that you're free to carry out your kink or your fetish however you like, provided you're not hurting anyone. That is the big caveat. These feeders then say, well, the person wants to be hurt, they're giving consent, they're choosing to be hurt, they want to be involved. But I say, just because somebody wants to be hurt doesn't mean it's okay for you to hurt them. If somebody says, hey, I want to jump off this building, you don't hand them a fucking ladder. You might ask them what's wrong, you might try and encourage them to get support. You certainly don't encourage them in their damaging behaviour and then stand by getting sexual gratification from watching it happen. That is sick.
Yes, the sexual gratification being brought into the whole scenario is really concerning. But of course, that's the paraphilic disorder, right? What she's describing. But she hasn't really gone into the depth of what's actually going on here because, like I've just said, and I'm not going to keep repeating myself because I'm not Rachel, it's just so much more than just the consent of the situation. It's not that simple. There's a condition.
So to answer my question, is Amber Lynn a free consenting participant? No, not really. She is a victim of manipulation.
She is not anyone's victim.
An addict might want a drink of alcohol, but what they really want is to get their kids out of the foster system. But they don't seem to be able to put this higher order want over the lower order want, and that is because of their addiction, and that is the situation that Amber is in. So sure, Amber loves food and Amber wants to eat, but really, really deep down when you cut it to the bone, Amber wants to lose weight.
I wholeheartedly disagree with this. I don't think Amber wants to lose weight. I don't think that's at all on her radar. I think Amber wants to be comfortable. Rachel doesn't understand the complexities of childhood trauma and arrested development and all of the ways that can play into the way you make decisions. Amber has gotten herself so stuck in her arrested development that she is at every turn desperately trying to just seek comfort in every way. And the biggest way that she's learned how to do this is basically with food. I think Rachel has fully missed the mark here. And I think this is just showing the difference between her, you know, talking about something like some music lyrics and her talking about really serious issues like this. I don't like the oversimplification just because of the message that it sends to the people that are watching, and also to the point of Amber. If she were watching this is why Amber shouldn't be watching reaction channels. But it's just not encompassing the situation to the degree that it needs to be considered, really. And Amber is all about comfort. She is all about avoiding the fear. She is all about what feels good in the moment. And that's pretty much as far as it goes. I think on some level, Amber knows that she should lose weight. And sometimes we see that come through when she gets caught in her little dopamine trap of planning and scheduling and, you know, going through the phases that she goes through. But it's not really about the weight.
The idea that Amber is evil, but that her partner Tommy, this feeder, is even worse is very interesting. And I suppose we have to ask the question, can a manipulator be manipulated? But the answer, in my opinion, is of course they can. A big bad guy can bump into an even bigger badder guy and become their victim. Amber might be a terrible person, but she hasn't had a hand in killing anyone, not that we know of. But Tommy has.
No. Oh, this is so irresponsible. No, we don't know that. We don't. She may not have. Can you imagine, just for a moment, imagine that some reaction channel on the internet does a video about you and labels you a killer with no evidence. This is not a crime. And even when it is a crime, by the way, it's extremely difficult to prove that it has been a crime, because but for somebody being bound and an activity that I can't say on YouTube, I'm so sorry, but unconsensually made to consume. Do you know what I'm talking about here? There needs to be the act of the option being taken away in order for this to be a crime. So there's very little precedent, because essentially it's the same thing as handing an alcoholic a drink, right? And we know that alcoholism can absolutely be fatal. And it's the same thing. Like, is the onus on the person who was doing the enabling? You know, maybe manslaughter at best. But what Rachel is saying here is definitively, with no wiggle room, that Emily was responsible for Colleen. And I'm sorry, but I know a lot of you are in the true crime space. You know full well that does not stand up in a court. Emily didn't help. And I think a lot of Emily's choices are incredibly questionable. But I'm not going to sit here on my platform and say definitively that she did that to Colleen. So no, we don't know that happened.
And I suppose it comes down to the moral question of, do awful people deserve to have awful things happen to them? I would say, to be honest, I don't know. This is kind of a personal moral judgment which you can make for yourself, but the thought doesn't really sit right with me personally.
So she said there, I don't know, but then she went on for a very extended, very repetitive argument, basically talking about how she doesn't believe in the death penalty and all of that. So she comes to the conclusion that bad people don't deserve bad things to happen to them, which, you know, I'm fine with. That's all good. I personally don't have a good answer to this, because you can take things to the extreme where it involves animals or children, and then I start to feel a certain kind of way. And I know that when it comes to animals, I personally can feel quite vengeful and I get a little chaotic in the brain, if you follow my drift. But she starts so well. She's like, I don't know, embracing that uncertainty, but then she fully makes up her mind, because in every instance of this, it feels like, although she is the philosophy queen, she has made a judgment, and in a lot of cases, a fairly ignorant judgment, at every single point.
So I conclude this section with the following sentence. Amber Lynn Reid is a victim of Tommy because Tommy is a predator and Amber is her prey in this particular situation.
Not anyone's victim.
I hope that I've shown you enough here for you to kind of understand that in its most extreme form, feederism is, in my opinion, a crime. At best, it is extremely, extremely exploitative. Allowing yourself to benefit sexually from somebody else's demise is wrong. It's always wrong. It has to be wrong.
Okay, so she didn't say objectively, but like we're kind of in the realm of that, right? Maybe she hasn't started picking up that for her vocabulary yet, but she did say, in my opinion, it's a crime. Unfortunately, a crime is not subject to your opinion, Rachel. A crime is a fact-based set of circumstances that need to be proven in order to basically hold the perpetrator to account. Although I do think, considering that the condition is on the table, I actually do think it should be considered a crime in some cases. But this, you can see how this unravels so quickly, because basically all the defense needs to prove is reasonable doubt. And as soon as you have an order on the table, it's like, well, they wanted it. And then where do you go from there? It's so difficult. It's so complicated. But no, Rachel, just because you think something is a crime does not make it a crime.
So rounding this back to Amber Lynn and Tommy, Tommy's been involved in these behaviours before and it's terrifying that she's now dating Amber. If Amber moves in with Tommy, it will become deeply, deeply concerning. Her life will genuinely, potentially be at risk.
So that's an interesting statement, and something just popped into my head now on watching it back. Is Rachel's trifling in the relationship to try and break them up some sort of weird roundabout way of protecting Amber from moving in with a feeder? I don't think that. It just popped into my head, so I needed to share it. But I do agree. I think these two, for both sides, to be perfectly honest, I think these two are incredibly toxic. And I think they have the capacity to destroy each other. The major reservation that I have is that there is a child involved on one of these sides. And I have very, very little patience for that kind of situation. It hasn't happened yet. To be honest, I'm kind of surprised it hasn't happened yet. But Amber is current day she's just announced her retirement from Girl World. I mean, totally retiring. She's making very little money on any of her social media platforms, and I don't know how sustainable this life is going to be. So is her next step going to be moving in with Emily? Yeah, I don't know. But like I've said before, I do really believe that both of these people are so devastatingly problematic to the partners that they're involved with in very different ways, but I think the severity levels are kind of matched, and at least they're occupying each other's time, and I think there is somewhat of a blessing to be found in there in a very warped way.
And this brings me to my final point, which I think is genuinely the saddest point of all of this whole video. And that is that, like I said in the intro, Amber thinks that she is in love. She thinks she's living in a love story, but she's not. She's living in a horror story. I did say I would come back to the point of love, and here we are. This, in my opinion, is the most dangerous part of feederism. The feeder does not actually care about the feedee. They certainly don't care about them in any meaningful way, or in any way which is active or promotes the person's longevity. They view their feedees as animals or as something to use for sexual gratification. And when the person passes away, they move on quickly, and this is the horrible reality of feederism. I said earlier that love in these types of situations often keeps women and people in abusive relationships that they shouldn't be in. Love is often used as an excuse for abuse. It's a tale as old as time. A person with low self-esteem who doesn't realise that they deserve better gets sucked into a relationship with an abuser who love bombs them, gets inside their mind and starts to convince them to see things their way.
That is correct. I'm sure that many of you have been there. in sort of coercive, controlling relationships, whether it's romantic, whether it's familial, whether it's friendship, whether it's even a workplace one. There's many different aspects that this can happen in. And basically what Rachel just described is pretty much what I'm saying has just happened to Remily via Quirky Love Rosie. And I think there's something very sinister playing out there. In that case, very different to how I view Amber and Emily. In the case of Quirky Love Rosie and Remily, I actually do think there's a power imbalance going on there. Whereas Emily is a grown woman and she's, self-actualized. She's had a career, she's had a kid, she's had several long-term relationships. There's a little bit more substance of the person that she is compared to that of Remily, which is Quirky Love Rose's boyfriend. He is going through the process of growing up and discovering who he is. Those are very, very different places. This is his first really long-term relationship, and even this one is only 6 months old. So I think that power imbalance really needs to be taken into account when we look at these sorts of situations. And I just don't see a power imbalance with Amber and Emily. I could be wrong. I'm not in the room with them, but it looks like they are amusing each other at the very least.
I don't personally want to sit here and watch it happen. I want to say something. So, to summarise, to what extent is Amberlynn Reid a free agent who can make her own choices? 100% she is. But that doesn't mean that Tommy is free to encourage her and get some sort of sick satisfaction from watching it happen. What duty of care do we have for others? Well, the ones who are close to us, whose lives we can actually affect, we have a massive duty of care. If somebody wants to hurt themselves in front of our eyes, it is our job, it is your job to step in my opinion anyway. This is my moral judgment. It's your choice to believe whatever you think is the case. But it is wrong to stand by and watch somebody suffer and then encourage them to carry out the behaviour which is leading to their suffering.
I actually disagree here. You all know that I come from a very live and let live philosophy, and I think that it's important to learn lessons where we can and to maybe influence our surroundings. But if we're talking about what Rachel's talking about right now, that is, do reaction channels or content creators, generally speaking, who are not in Amber's life, have a moral responsibility to protect her from harm? I don't think we do. I really don't. And I think that this is a crossroads for Rachel, because this would have been the moment of, am I involved or am I spectating? Am I standing at an aquarium looking in at the fish, or am I swimming with them? And I think that's a really important thing. And why I think it's important is because there's so many different creators out there with so many different moral and ethical lines, just as she said, and many different perspectives, many different takes, many different ways of dealing with things, that if Amber were to take advice from everybody, it would just be utter chaos. They would all conflict with each other. I think for the most part, we're wanting to see her improve. I definitely want to see her improve. But then there's people like Rachel who have said that she likes seeing the downfall. So my point being, I don't think it's for us as outside people who have never even met Amber to sit here and say our perspective on this is right, because we could be very, very wrong about the situation here. So I think it's great that Rachel wants to sit there and say, from a moral perspective, it's not okay to sit back and watch people suffer or destroy themselves. But I don't know. Maybe it takes having witnessed different lives being lived and different motivations being played out. It's so much more complicated than just saying you shouldn't want to unalive yourself, if that makes sense. It's a very tricky situation, but once again, I don't know that Rachel has the emotional breadth to fully take in all of the moving pieces here. And as we find out, she doesn't even fully understand all of the situation at this point where she's sitting now, because things change quite a bit over the coming year.
As internet observers, there is not much we can do to stop Amber from being with Tommy. We can try and be factual, and I want to say kind in how we talk about Amber.
I agree, Rachel. I thoroughly agree with this clip. Just as a reminder, here's some clips from this year.
I've never lied about anything serious ever.
That's
Ever.
why.
Ha 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 ha. I think the fuck not. All this video contains is my opinion and some fucking cold hard proof. So you can sit on that and fucking spin, Amber.
There's nothing there.
Get your neck out, get your neck out, get your neck out for the lads. Oh, I love it here.
No.
Look at her. She's like covering it up and like all scared. Just fucking whip it out. It's the sort of embarrassment and shame that she has that makes it so entertaining.
So at some point in between November of 2024 and February of 2026, we had a complete and utter shift. So the mask came off, all of the morals and ethics were pushed to the side, or at least if they were there to begin with, I don't know. Everything, the crux of everything that she set up on her grand entrance, and it was a grand entrance into Girl World, fell in the space of, a year and 3 months. We're going to find out exactly when that happened, Nuggets, because we are going all through this. Now, something that I would like to know from you as well is how thorough would you like this to be? Do you want to see every single ignorant thing that Rachel said in that year? Or do you want a more kind of overarching view of it? Let me know in the comments. Tell me what you want to see.
We can certainly be mindful and thoughtful and honest in how we discuss Amber and this situation. I'm not saying we need to be fake, but I think we need to speak with a heart of hoping that she does free herself.
Isn't that staggering, that difference? It's something. It was all fake. None of this was her. And had people have seen like the videos that she did leading up to this, because there are quite a few videos where she got quite snarky and was a little bit mean girl about it and sarcastic and things like that, but people from Girl World didn't see them because they were like piercing videos or lush videos or, you know, things that Girl World for the most part, moving as a large group, are not going to be interested in. And it just slipped under the radar, didn't it?
There's no joy in sitting there wanting somebody to fail, wanting somebody to potentially die. There's no pleasure and there's no benefit, in my opinion, not really, from sitting there and coaxing somebody on and enjoying and loving the fact that they're gaining weight and suffering and getting what they deserve. If you sit there and enjoy watching Amber gain weight to the point of death, you are no better than Tommy, let's be honest. There's nothing cute about hoping something bad happens to someone else. I just think that's dodgy.
No, I agree. I'm interested to know what happened behind this, because clearly she started with this intent, right? And at some point she got way too invested, and that led to the whole flirting drama. And, you know, a person that she herself labeled as a DV victim, she's flirting with just to get the tea to share with Girl World. I'm interested in the mechanism that happened between those 2 points. Why did she get so involved in this? Is it just as simple as she developed a hyperfixation or an overobsession? And, you know, when we talk about hyperfixations, they can be really handy when you're doing hobbies, but they can be quite dangerous when we're talking about people. You want to try and avoid a hyperfixation on a person. Was it just that, or did she get swept away with the drama, or is there another explanation for this? I'm really interested in what happened in her mind. And was there a trigger point that caused it? I suppose we will find out, but the way I'm kind of looking at it at the moment, I hadn't watched a lot of Rachel videos before the big expose, so that would have been, is that October last year? So there's actually quite a big period of time where I hadn't watched Rachel videos, and I don't know how it unravels, but yeah, this is what the historical deep dives are for. So there's going to be a few more Rachel videos coming than I thought there were, but I'm guessing a lot of you are okay with that, right?
Let's hope that Amber chooses to surround herself with better people as time goes on. Let's hope that Amber takes a step away from her relationship with Tommy. But if the least we can do is just keep an eye on her, let's just do that. I know this video was a bit serious. I will make some lighter-hearted stuff soon, but I just couldn't keep quiet on this topic when I found it so fascinating. I really appreciate you guys watching, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Okay, so I believe Rachel recorded this video and made this video with the intent that it was just going to be one of the many splattered various topic videos that she was making at the time. There was no way that she would have known that this video was going to blow up the way that it did. And you can really see on her Social Blade statistics, you can pinpoint exactly where this video was released, and it was kind of just upwards from there. And then of course that next major peak was the video that basically undid everything, and she fell from there and has kind of been stagnant since. But yeah, it was a big deal for Rachel. At no point in all of her history before this on YouTube, it was like a good 10 years on YouTube, had she seen any level of success that rivaled this video. But of course, like I say, she couldn't have known that. So then when it happened, I'm assuming she probably got very excited because there would have been a lot of money and there would have been a lot of subscribers coming in, and these are things that really matter to Rachel. So then she just doubled down and got into it. Had she have stayed doing what she did with the vibe of this video, I think there would have been massive success. I think she still would have been one of the dominant creators in the space now, but instead she let her love of money make her greedy, and she way overstepped, and it bit her. And like I say, she hasn't recovered since. Actually, all of the people who are involved in that have not recovered since. I will do a Where Are They Now video in the coming months, but yes, let me know what you think about this. Were you there at the time, and did you see this coming? Was there anything that kind of gave you an off feeling at this point in time if you were there? And if you weren't there, did any of this surprise you? I'm really keen to hear what you all think. But if you're still here listening to me, this is a heckin' video. I hope you enjoyed it. I really appreciate each and every one of you, and an extra big thank you to all of my clockers who support on YouTube memberships, Patreon or Twitch. And don't forget, if you do have a membership or if you want to get a membership, I do weekly clockers only live streams on Discord and Patreon, and then I upload the replay link on YouTube afterwards. So yeah, we have a lot of fun over there, but a big thank you to all of you. But that is all the clocks I have left to give. Stay golden, my little nuggets, and I'll catch you next time.
Hey! I'm gonna go watch another video. Let's go!